We're back at it again in the Dolomites. I think this is probably the last video from here. Who knows? I wanted to do something different than the typical Dolomites photos. And so there's still a lot of fall colors, and I thought that this waterfall would probably be a good place to have or to show off those fall colors. So we've driven down some crazy roads, some windy roads, and we're at a waterfall. Let's backtrack a little bit so you can see some of those epic roads. When I asked a lot of locals about when fall would end in the Dolomites, they said end of October at the latest. But here we are, mid-November, and things are still near the peak. It is stunning. I wanted to capture that fall beauty without the crutch of the incredible peaks here. So I wandered off with my group to a little-known waterfall I found scanning around Google Maps. And after a short but beautiful walk through the forest, we eventually made it to the waterfall. 99% of the waterfalls I photograph, I struggle with this thing, that the waterfall is just too thin. In the frame, it just doesn't fill enough of it, so you end up with a bunch of dead stuff on both sides of the image. And the only way I can really save it is by cutting out the vast majority of the top of the waterfall. So I end up just photographing the tiny little waterfall at the bottom anyway. But I think it's really the only thing that works here. There are some cool looking spots lower down. They're just impossible to get to unless you have like rappelling and rock climbing gear, which I don't. So yes, this is awesome. It was a really cool hike, but a really tough photo as well. I quickly realized though that this is going to be one of those moments where the quality of life experience far outlives the quality of the photographs. The coolest frame here might actually be opposite the waterfall. But still, I worked the composition and came up with something. It's definitely not what I came up here to do, but it's something nonetheless. In the morning, we made our way back to a place we'd photographed before, Lago di Braiche. And despite a bit of a bluebird sky, we retreated to some stunning alpenglow at some truly classic scenes. I just totally forgot to vlog this morning. I don't know why. I just got so excited about taking pictures that I forgot to film. But it was a good morning with some alpenglow, and now we're late for our sunset and hiking up near Santa Magdalena to a viewpoint up there. But as you can see, sun's already behind the mountains. So I'm hoping there's still good light, but we're definitely a little bit later than we should be. So gotta cruise up this hill. Oh, and there's the church, kind of. Ever show up to a sunrise or sunset photo location and the light's already kicking off, so you're scrambling to get to your spot? Then luckily, it gets even better? That's what happened. Just as we were nearing our location to set up for sunset, the moon spectacularly popped over the horizon. I just filmed for like a minute and a half of myself talking, but I didn't push the play button. So I'm talking again. Up at the view, we've made it for the light. It's beautiful. This vista's phenomenal. And I think with vistas, you kind of get trapped in this idea that you can just set up your camera and take the photo. But the difference between a good photograph and a great photograph is a helicopter's trying to ruin my audio, is just the little details. So I've moved 15 feet to the right and 4 feet up to improve my composition a little bit by putting the tower in a spot where it wasn't being blocked by some trees. So little difference, but it makes a big difference, I think. On the camera, I've got my 24-70 and 4-stop medium grad ND. That's basically what I've been shooting this entire trip. One lens, one filter, kind of crazy. I'm also shooting 16:9, which I've been shooting basically the entire Dolomites trip, which is kind of funny. I should challenge myself to use these two lenses, or this lens in this setup the entire time, because I could have done it. Would have been an easy challenge. And yeah, Soft glowing light, moon above the peaks, and this could be special if we get some light. Well, that was an awesome spot. I really like this location, and that was, again, really close to perfect. We didn't get any sky above it or clouds above it, but I don't think it mattered because of the crop. You don't really need a phenomenal sky above a scene that beautiful. And I said this, I can't remember when I said this, maybe this morning, maybe yesterday. I think I said it on this video, that places like the Dolomites are almost not fair because they're so beautiful. You don't really need the right conditions for photography to get beautiful photos. You get a little bit spoiled in places like this, and I'm feeling spoiled on this trip. We spent another 2 days in the Dolomites. I decided not to film too much, but rather focused on exploring, discovering, and just taking in all the incredible sights. And eventually, it was time to head home. Okay, so I'm back in Portugal, and excuse the mess in my office, my studio. It is a disaster, but it turns out when you're not here very much, things get dusty. And a lot has happened in Portugal, if I'm being honest, since the last time I spoke with you guys. All positive and all really fun, but I think I'm long overdue an update video about life. So look for that maybe, in a couple weeks when I get around to it. Also, I have videos from Antarctica and Iceland still coming. I'm just really slow. Anyways, I want to finish this video talking a little bit about what I learned in the Dolomites. About photography. And not about photography in general, just about photography in the Dolomites. The Dolomites are absolutely beautiful, like mind-blowingly beautiful, and so photogenic. But at the same time, I don't think I really got into them. In the Canadian Rockies, the absolute best viewpoints are almost drivable. You can drive right up to a parking lot and walk a couple steps and get to these really cool spots. And yes, there's amazing photos elsewhere and farther in, but there's some really beautiful spots really close to roads. It's the same case in the Dolomites. You have 5 or 6 locations that are pretty close to roads that you can drive to, park, walk up to, and take photos. But as much as I love the photos I get at locations like this, the experience of finding new things and new angles and new compositions is something I really enjoy in photography, and I struggled with a little bit in the Dolomites because of the nature of my trip. It was a driving-based trip in the winter season where you can't really hike to a lot of places. And I think that the Dolomites are probably best photographed and explored by hiking and by walking. Even some of the absolute classic images of the Dolomites you can't get to without walking for an hour. Alpe di Suisse is unreal, and there's roads all over it, but you can only drive those roads if you're staying at one of the accommodations inland. Otherwise, you have to walk. And that's totally cool. I actually love that about it. It just means you have to be prepared to hike. You need to spend a lot of time hiking to locations. You need to devote some time to exploring. And the shoulder season that we went into was unreal for photo making at locations you could get to quite easily. But it left us really limited in some of the really, epic places that you had to hike to. And I think if I go back to the Dolomites, I'm going to aim for a little bit earlier in the fall and do a lot more hiking, do a lot more diving into the mountains. And finally, a theme I think you saw a lot on this series was the sun behind the mountains. There's a lot of really cool locations in the Dolomites, but for some reason they all face south. And in the winter, fall months, the sun's right behind them. And it led to a lot of backlit images. And some of those images came out really, really cool because they were backlit, and some it was a bit of a struggle. So I think the Dolomites were great this season, shoulder season. I'd highly recommend going. We didn't see any other photographers and hardly any other tourists. It was kind of crazy. But maybe early spring might be better. You might get better light on the peaks. You might get a little bit better access to certain places, and maybe a wider variety of photo locations. I felt like we got kind of limited in our photo locations and the light we had. But still, the Dolomites were absolutely awesome, and in fact, I've announced another trip to Italy. So if you want to come on a photography workshop with me to Italy, I have one coming in 2023 in the early fall. It'll be the Dolomites in fall and Cinque Terre right after that. I'm going to mix both of them together, and it's going to be epic. So if you want to join me on that trip, there's a link in the description below, and I'll see you on the next video, which is going to be from Antarctica. Peace.